with my guest host Teddy, one of our shop boxers, and today we're going to talk about water pumps and the difference between mechanical and electric, some of the advancements that have come out, as well as hopefully we can kind of crack some of the myths and tell you about the success and failures we've had so you can make a decision on your project about what's right, and then also setting it up properly. So whatever decision you make, whether it's mechanical or electric or a remote mount or whatever, you need to make the right components go around with it so that everything works properly. So real quick, little plug for my own products. The new Motion Vintage Edition Nova t-shirts just came out and they're awesome. Teddy loves them. So get on the website now. They won't be around long. We're not going to reorder them, so when they're gone, they're gone. Really cool shirts. They're not black. Your wife's going to love it. Order yours today. If this video is viewed by you in 6 months, I'm sorry, they're gone. But if you see it today, order it. You're going to love it. So just like all the other stuff I've learned about cooling systems, what I learned about water pumps is from my own successes and failures. I don't derive a lot of this from science. I do things, and if they work, I repeat them, try new things, and what I'm sharing with you today is what I've learned and what I know works well. I wouldn't share it with you otherwise. So I just want you to know where I'm coming from. I have no bias. To be honest with you, I don't really care if I sell any of this stuff. What I do know is that a car that stays cool and runs cool and doesn't have overheating trouble is a lot of times the difference between an enjoyable ride and a not enjoyable ride, both on the street and at the track. So today we'll touch on both mechanical and electric water pumps because I feel like there's a place for both of them, and not everybody's going to build a 1500 horsepower turbocharged car. Not everybody's going to want a street car that only makes 400 or 500 horsepower. So it's very situational on which one you need, which one works really well for you. As with a lot of things, our biggest market is the guys that are making 700 to 1500 horsepower. So I tend to speak a lot to them because it's always better to have too much than not enough. So, you know, my theory is here, let's just give you everything and you decide what you want to use from it. So what we have here are your typical pumps. I guess I'm missing one block-mounted electric water pump, but here is your basic F-body specific LS1 water pump. So the reason why the LS1 platform is so exciting and so enticing is because you can pull these motors right out of the junkyard, and in fact that's what most people do. You know, there's the SBE crowd that the guys are trying to push the stock bottom end engines as far as they can. Well, what happens with a lot of this stuff is they try to make the factory accessories and the factory components work as much and as far as possible. And that's great, but there are some little pearls that need to be understood before you can utilize this. And that being said, it doesn't mean that this is the right answer for your combo. Just because it came with it when it made 300 horsepower doesn't mean it's also going to be good. In regards to mechanical water pumps, there's no real true definition and dividing line between when they work and when they don't. So a lot of what I see are people have a whole wrong combination as far as cooling systems. So if your radiator's not right and your fans are not right, sometimes the water pump gets blamed and vice versa. That being said, there are some things that a lot of people don't consider with water pumps that do play a huge role. So I don't mean to cater just to the LS market, but a lot of the market today doing new builds is LS. So this will carry over to the Coyote stuff and new LT stuff and the old small block and big block. So number one being, you know, you can't forget everything you know about accessories. So a lot of these guys are putting on underdrive crank pulleys to underdrive accessories. Well, first thing that's affected is this. And then you add boost. So you're adding a bunch of heat to the engine but decreasing the amount of coolant flow. So I know there's a lot of controversy out there on, oh, you need a slow coolant flow so it goes through the radiator so that it has more time to cool. That shit's all bullshit. I've proven it's wrong. I'm sure there's a dividing line between if you rocket that water through and when you don't. But for the most part, you know, if you're using an electric water pump or a mechanical pump, you can't get outside of that realm. So the biggest thing obviously is thermostat. So you want to pay attention to what thermostat you have, and then also when your fans turn on and off. But getting back to the thermostat side of things, if you have a 210 degree thermostat, of course it's going to stay there. If you have a lower, good. So that's pretty basic knowledge. But what people don't understand is a lot of these water pumps are designed to run a thermostat. So, you know, the easy concept when I say that you don't need a thermostat is to pull it out, right? Okay, well now you've changed the form and function of how this water pump works and how it flows. And I'll get into that right now. So the next thing we'll talk about are your heater hose ports. So a lot of people think that you can just go ahead and cap these off. Well, you know, when all this is designed and engineered from the factory, it's designed with different passages within. So simply capping it off may keep the water from flowing out of it, but it's not going to necessarily work properly. Sometimes there's bypasses and channels, and there's a reason why the fluid goes out of this. I'm going to post a link below. It's going to talk in depth about blocking these off and not running a thermostat. It was done by a guy who's an engineer by day, and he kind of went through all the research and development and checked all this out because he had a car that was overheating. And it'll kind of shed some more light on it, especially in the terms of how an LS1 works. Really informative. There's a lot of minutia in there, but you can go ahead and go to it and check it out. So if you can see here, the thermostat actually is like a dual stage thermostat on these LS engines. So there's actually a seat here where it seals up, and then obviously here. And then if you look, there's a plunger that moves past here, and then there's a plunger that moves down in there. So there's actually like multiple passageways. So, you know, when people plug just these and then don't run a thermostat, you're really changing the characteristics of how all of this works. So this thread on Yellowbullet that I'll post a link below on kind of talks more about what you need to do to modify this if you're not going to run a thermostat. Not only can you actually need to loop these rather than plug them, and then also they talk about how you need to address this situation, which is this is just a water bypass. So if you don't plug that in some fashion, the water is going to go right past as a bypass, and it's not going to, you know, operate correctly in the water pump. Now that we've talked about what the effects of an underdrive does on this and the effects of moving ports around and plugging them off, and then as well as a thermostat, let's just talk about the mechanical pump in general. So at least on the LS platform, and I know other platforms are the same way, there are different flow rates for different pumps. So for instance, the LS pumps, some of the truck pumps flow significantly more than the car version on the same style engine. So when one guy says I don't have an overheating issue, another one says I do, if all of these things are fine, one thing you might look at is flow. There's a lot of arguments, like I said earlier, that you'll see online. People will say, well, you need to slow flow down and blah, 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 blah. Well, I've proven it with my own cars, and a good example of this is last year, my father has a big block Chevy NA car, and he track races it primarily, but his cars don't have grills in the front. They're just sealed off and they're fiberglass. So his car would have a little bit of difficulty cooling, especially on a hot day. Well, he has an electric water pump. So why is that relevant? Well, you look at his electric water pump and it looks like it may have come off the Titanic. It was some old Moroso one from the 70s or 80s, maybe early 90s, I don't know. But it didn't flow anything. So fast forward to last winter, we made him put a nice Mazir, I think it was a 42 or 55 gallon per minute pump, which was like double of what the Moroso one he had on it before flowed. And all of a sudden the car cools. So that example of my dad's car was not the last one. We do it all the time with LS cars. They'll have a great cooling system, great fans, great radiator, stock pump on it. First thing we do you have an underdrive pulley? No, car's still overheating. We switch this pump out to, say, a Mazir block mounted pump or one of these remote pumps, and all of a sudden their problems go away. I never hear from them again. So This isn't like it worked once type of thing, it's constantly, and that's why I'm making this video, because I want to try and fill you guys in so that you can take the guesswork out of it. Because I mean, by the time you do all these little trials and tribulations yourself, you're talking months, so you might give up half of a summer or a whole summer trying to figure out your cooling issues. Just watch these 3 videos and that's all it takes. So now that we've talked about mechanical pumps, they have their limitations. If you have 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower street car, yeah, you can get away with it. Some guys get away with it. But here's my thing. If you're going to the track a lot or you're driving down the street a lot, there is nothing nicer than being able to hit the water pump and the fans and you have a new motor. You know, you come back to the pits, both buttons on, all of a sudden the car is cool in a few minutes, takes all the heat soak out of everything, and life is good. Whereas if you have this, you know, you're gonna go back and sit in that hot water, is gonna sit in the radiator, it's gonna sit in the motor, and it's gonna take you a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour to cool off. So we all waste a lot of money on dumb shit, you know, expensive wheels, just trinkets and all that stuff. An electric water pump is a great place to spend money, just like a good radiator and a good set of fans. So invest in that, you're gonna have a lot more fun. You figure you go to the track and if you get 5 passes in a night instead of 2 or 3 or whatever, you know, you've really got your money's worth. Going to the track, every time I go to the track, I know it costs me hundreds of dollars between fuel, leaving work early, loading a car up, unloading a car, everything I break, whatever. So I like to try and fit as many passes into one night at the track where all the variables stay similar as I can. So, and from that respect, it makes sense for me. So what, it's a few $100s extra, it makes sense, and it makes the car more usable and a lot more fun. So we use 2 types of electric pumps around here. Unfortunately for the LS market, there's not a whole lot of different options for water pumps. But that being said, the Mezier stuff is phenomenal. You know, their cases are all made from billet, they're made in the US, and their stuff just flat out works. So I started out, a lot of my projects I used to use the block mounted pump that looks like this, just without a pulley, and I think they flow like 55. I think they might even have a Super Duty that pump that pumps 62 gallons per minute. Those pumps are awesome. In all my recent projects, especially anything that has a turbo on it, I just instantly go to the remote mount pump. And why that's good is because it frees up all that space in the front of your engine. So these are some billet water blocks that we make. This one right here is for a Gen 5 LT motor. This one's great because nobody makes an aftermarket pump that's really worth anything right now that lays out right. Mezier's isn't even that good because it sets everything off to the side and it's just kind of awkward and expensive. These are nice. They basically just bolt right where the water pump normally would on the front of the motor, and then you run your inlet and outlet number 12 lines over to the pump and the radiator. So this stuff just frees up a lot of that space between the front of the fans and the front of the motor. So if you have downpipes crossing over, if that's where you want to put your turbo, accessory wise it clears up area and gives you more routing ability as well. And this is what I run on all of our drag week style cars, if you will. And it keeps up great on the street and at the track. This pump right here flows as much as the one that mounts on the block. Like I said, it just gives you more flexibility on where you route and plumb everything for your turbo, and it gets it out of the way. So we have these for the Gen 5 LT and the LS for sure, and then coming soon for the Coyote stuff. So the reason I like electric pump also is it definitely makes bleeding the cooling system a lot easier, at least on our LS motor. Quick little plug. So this is our LS steam core kit. So basically what this does is it connects all 4 corners of the heads to get all the trapped steam out of the cylinder heads. So what that does is it balances temperatures between all the cylinders front and back. A lot of the LS motors came with the back ones plugged. So connecting them makes a big difference as far as getting pressure out, which leads to higher temperatures. Easier to tune, and definitely a proven product. A lot of the bigger name engine builders in the world want you to run these. So the other nice thing about this is if you have an electric pump and you're filling up a cooling system for the first time, all you do is you run a hose right from this middle port that would normally go to your radiator, put that in a bucket, and just turn your water pump on and basically so the nice thing is once you have all 4 corners connected, you have a middle hose and you can hook an AN hose directly up to the middle block here, or you can run our line and then hook a rubber hose up to it. Either way, if you want to bleed the air out of the system in your car so you don't have a bunch of air pockets overheating your car, you literally, with an electric water pump, just turn it on and you put this middle hose in a bucket and it's going to drain out all the air. Eventually it's just going to be straight fluid coming out, and that's how you know it's all bled. And it's as simple as that. It takes a lot of the effort out of things. So the next question I get on electric pumps when we're talking about them with customers is, ooh, I really don't want to have to worry about that going out when I'm driving. I drive my car a lot, you know. I really don't want to have to carry a spare and stuff. Personally, I've run the Mazira style pumps on probably half a dozen cars I've built, and I've literally never had one go out. And they actually have a guarantee on their pumps. I don't know how many hours it is, but I back calculated at like 55 miles an hour, and it was like 60 or 70,000 miles they're good for if you did continuous driving. And I've proven it to be true. So this isn't the 80s. These electric motors are great. These things are designed well and they just work. So that side of things, if I get 60, 70,000 miles, if I get 30,000 miles out of an electric water pump on a race style setup, I'm good. Everything else on the car is probably worn out around it. So that side of things, definitely don't worry about it. So as far as remote mount pumps go, we use, it's called a WP337S. I'll also have a link to it below here in this YouTube video. And so it just has a single port on the inlet and a dual port on the outlet. So basically the bottom hose of your radiator is going to go into here. We run a 16 into it, and then you're going to have 2 12s that come out of it. So basically 1 12 into each side of the inlet on here. They make a couple variations. They make one with a single outlet, but that works out well because you already have one on each side for this, so it lays out perfect. And like I said in that earlier video, a single 16 hose feed and a single 16 hose return is great. Obviously this one has 2 12s, just fine. Don't get caught up in the dash 20 stuff and all that craziness. We're not racing NASCAR here. Your fittings selection goes out the window when you have that. I do recommend that you use a nylon braided hose. Stuff holds up really good to a lot of different conditions, and at least on here, especially in the engine bay, I like to use that. I don't like using that clear stuff or anything that you get at the hardware store. We always use the Vergola stuff. Best fittings and hose on the market. So now that I've kind of explained the differences, and I try not to be too LS specific because there's a lot more out there than that. Do your research, find out, what is my mechanical pump rated for, how many gallons per minute, and then compare it to the Mazira or whatever brand water pump you have. Flow does matter, just like air movement on a radiator matters, just like the fan CFM matters. It does matter. You should at least compare the two so you can make a decision on what's right for your project. Because in the end of the day, the worst thing you can do is build your accessories around this when what you actually wanted was this off to the side. You now have to reroute all your front accessories and you may not have had room for it. So I hope that I kind of brought some new information together for you so you can make an informed decision and see what's out there on the market. Like I said, the best thing for me is to have a car that cools basically to the point where you need to turn a fan or a pump off, because it's easier to warm it back up than it is to cool it when you don't have anything else to cool it with. Guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Motion 360. YouTube, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Motion 360. I hope you like what you saw. I hope the last 3 episodes on radiators, fans, and water pumps has kind of enlightened you on cooling systems. We've done the hard work, we've failed, we've tested all these things, so now we deliver it to you so that you can enjoy your car more and guess less. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with a friend. Stay tuned, there's more to come.